Quiet Place Day One is directed by Michael Sarnowski and stars Lupita Nyong'o. I'm sorry if I can't get her name right. And Joseph Quinn, and among others. And this story is a prequel set before the events of the first Quiet Place film, in which the very first day of the apocalypse happens, where you have Lupita's character that's essentially roaming the streets of New York, and basically, as you've seen from the trailers, there's the invasion that happens where the alien type of creatures come down and they're terrorizing the entire city and everything, and she's having to survive along with Joseph Quinn's character along the way, and also her cat that's named Frodo. And it's up to them to pretty much survive and get their way across and try to keep quiet throughout the film. And that's pretty much the basic gist of it, is, just trying to survive from the apocalypse with all the stuff happening, with the creatures going around in the city, killing everyone. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, going back in 2018 when the first Quiet Place came out, I got to admit that it was a movie that kind of caught me off guard, because I didn't see it in theaters. I waited until it really hit later on when I watched it at home. Because it was one of those movies that I heard it was good, but I just didn't really bother seeing it because I just really had no expectations for it, because I thought it was just going to be your standard, survival type of film, and just doing something with the whole kind of sound and stuff is interesting, but it just didn't really catch me on that kind of level until I watched it later on. And so that was actually something that I did kind of feel like I wish I could have saw in theaters, because I really did get a great kick out of the first Quiet Place, and it was a nice surprise seeing something very original with trying to tell a story from director John Krasinski, trying to tell this tale of this family trying to survive, and having to pretty much rely on sign language and not doing any kind of sound whatsoever. And so when it was really getting me excited to see what they were going to do after that. And when the second one came out back in 2021, that got me really hyped, especially with a lot of the stuff that they really were going to expand on with, and really telling the story of kind of exploring some more stuff that we didn't get to see from the first one. And what was interesting that I really appreciated with the second film was that they actually kind of already did basically a backstory in that one, where you pretty much had the day one type of stuff happening at the same as a kind of a prequel to the first movie. And so I kind of really thought they were already kind of touched base on that in that one, where we already see the things that were going at the beginning of the apocalypse and everything. And two really stepped up quite a bit to where I really loved that one a lot, and it expanded a lot of stuff that we had seen evolve with the creatures, and seen things from the very beginning, and some other characters they introduced, especially like Cillian Murphy and all that, and Jomon Hansu, and I'm sorry if I can't get his name correctly. And he was definitely an interesting character that I was hoping they were going to do more with. And so going into this one, I was interested to see what they were going to do with it. But there were a couple things that kind of threw me off guard. One of them, with it not being directed by John, it did also made me kind of really, kind of question, okay, since they have a new director, of how things will go, because seeing how John pretty much directed the other two, when they have a different director taking over, it always kind of makes me wonder how they pull it off, especially with, this is kind of just in that this is also another horror-related franchise, but it's kind of similar to how James Wan did the first two Conjuring films, and then they had a different director on the third film. So you know what I mean? It's like going into those kind of movies, it's like when you're the person that's behind the camera kind of steps back and doesn't really direct the next one, it makes you really kind of wonder if they're going to really, the next director pulls off the same kind of technique. And so on top of that, I also kind of questioned how this was going to really be a prequel, especially with the second one pretty much already kind of filling in some gaps that we got to explore in the second one, but that before the events of the first one. But I still went into it with still open-minded, because I do appreciate that they wanted to kind of switch perspectives, where instead of doing the family again, they wanted to make it to where it's in it's entirely bigger city this time. And from the trailers, that really got me interested to see. You're seeing this bigger scope that they're going with a lot of more louder and more areas and everything. And so upon seeing the film, I can say that I really did enjoy this movie a lot. It really surprised me in a lot of ways, like the first one did. Not really sure how it's going to rank as far as 2, because I really love 2 a lot. I think I would put this on the same level as the second one, maybe slightly below or anything, but it's definitely still a really good follow-up. And it really continues to show that this franchise is still going strong, with not only adding new layers to the story, but also being able to still give us a very emotional and touching type of tale too, about that I'll get into. And so to get my pros out of the way, I really enjoyed the cast in this, especially Lupita. I really admire her as an actress, especially for other films she did, especially like from Us, Black Panther movies, things like that. She is a very great actress in her own right, and I'm glad that she's really getting to shine more of these type of horror type of movies that she's in, because she pulls it off here, and she's definitely carries the whole movie. Both her and Joseph Quinn especially. Like, them two, not only do they have really great chemistry together, but I appreciate that the movie kind of takes, for about the first half, we really focus more on the stuff that's like kind of pulling like a perspective similar to what Spielberg did with War of the Worlds, in that most of the stuff that you're seeing in the first half is all in Lupita's perspective, and it's pretty much seeing her as a survivor trying to go through stuff. I like that, and I will give it a lot of praise for that technique of how they really went into the direction with it. But I also do have kind of a small con on that, in that I'll get to later with. But she really carries this movie, and I think it's great to see her. You really feel for her character and stuff, because, not going to go into detail, but she has something very personal that's going on in the film that also raised the stakes even more higher. And a lot of the stuff that she goes through, especially trying to protect her cat, Frodo, in the movie, was not only very heartwarming, but you just really want to see her get through everything. And so she was great. And then Joseph Quinn, I really admire him from Stranger Things from season 4, and I thought that he really got to shine his own regard here. It's weird how he went from a guy that's very hyperactive, like very, like in that heavy metal type of vibe, and then go into a more like very nuanced type of character like this, where he's very scared and he's just trying to get through everything and trying to protect Lupita's character. And so he was great. And to get into some more of my pros, I will have to say too that the way the movie kind of also starts, where you're seeing the everyday lives of people and stuff before the setup and everything, is also really good, that you really start to introduce your characters and giving them like what their lives are like before the stuff goes down. I really appreciate that. And there's even another character they introduced that I was actually kind of wondering where it was going through when they introduced this character, because I really felt like it was leading to something kind of really emotional and impactful in that regard. So that was good. And then the way that they were able to craft the suspenseful moments of the creatures and everything was really top notch, especially this like when the stuff goes down in the beginning where you see like just nothing but fog and stuff. That really sets things into gear. And then when there's other parts where they're having to hide, especially this part of the subway and everything, it was really having me on the edge. And so, much like the other two films, they really know how to the scares, and the way that they were able to set up a lot of the sound editing was very top notch in the way that you're that any kind of little minor thing that can happen and the creature can hear it right there. Like, that to me is not only great filmmaking, but it also puts our characters in a lot more of the higher stakes than what we see. And keep in mind that we've seen a lot of these films where characters make dumb mistakes, and you do see some characters in this film that do make that decision where they make a sound by accident or intentionally, and not really realizing that they're getting themselves in trouble and stuff. But just the way it plays along, it really had me on the edge. And then I appreciate that we get to see more of Digimon in this movie, because we get to see more of his character and where he came from before the events of 2 and stuff. So that was great. And then on top of that, they also explore some stuff that I found myself, that I can't remember if it was explored in the other 2 films, but it has to do with like some of the limitations that the creatures don't have to where they can't reach people and stuff. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it definitely comes into play with a crucial plot point that comes in the ending. That I find myself very, very engaged with on that. So that was great. There's more like going into detail, but this is definitely a movie that I expected, that I went into with just open-minded like this, and it really came out very strong with trying to be another entry. If I had to get in any kind of cons that do kind of hold the movie back just a little bit, is that there is a part where there's kind of a weird kind of dream sequence that happens that I felt really took the mood out of the movie. It really changed the mood of the movie for me, because it felt like it would have belonged into a different movie. And when it happens, I kind of knew it was a dream sequence, and so I felt like it was really unnecessary. And I get maybe the intention that it was trying to go for with Lupita's character doing it and everything, but it just really seems like that it felt out of place, and it really shouldn't belong there. On top of that, some of the sound editing, some of the sound that the characters make can be illogical to a couple points, where it's like, okay, it's weird how the creatures can't hear one thing, but then they can hear another, if that makes sense. But that only happened just a couple times. 'Cause for the most part, they keep it very consistent with a lot of the parts. They keep it very consistent with the characters trying to be as quiet as possible. And so that was just my only other issue. And then on top of that, I felt like it was kind of a missed opportunity to an extent of not really seeing like the big grand scale of things, because I felt like, at least from what I got from the trailers and everything, I was kind of expecting the movie to kind of go on that more bigger type of approach where you're seeing like the creatures and everything taking over, like, destroying buildings and killing people, like doing more massive carnage than what we see. And I appreciate the movie wanted to still go for a more grounded approach with it, but it still would have been nice to see more of the bigger scale that we probably could have expected, especially with this being New York. We saw the other kind of grounded, smaller scale with the other two films. It just would have been nice to really see stuff like as a combination of seeing the bigger stuff involved while also keeping that very kind of grounded level. Kind of what we got with like something like Cloverfield, where you still see like the military and stuff coming in and everything, but a lot of it, what we see in the film, isn't quite there because it's mostly through the eyes of our lead character through when the shit goes down at the beginning. So that's really just one of my only kind of missed opportunities I think that really could have explored with. But on a very emotional level, it still really worked to its extent, and it knows what it's going for. And with that, I'm going to give the movie a low phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. It may or may not be on. It may possibly be on my best of the year list. It just depends. And if anything, it'll make my honorable mention. If anything, and so for those of you who've also seen A Quiet Place Day One and also the other films, let me know in the comments of what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.